Nick, I want a game to take me from rags to literal riches in a big, exponential curve. You got any ramp-up games?
No. What's up, everybody? My name is Nick.
I'm Mike.
We are the Bros Murph, and today we're going to talk about games that ramp up, games that really
escalate.
Yes, really escalate is the best way of putting it. Where maybe the first round you're doing a couple things here and there. By the end of the game, you're just like you're doing all this crazy stuff. If it's a game with like damage, you're just like dealing tons and tons of damage. One of those ramp up games. There's a lot of these kinds of games. Sometimes it can be again like a fighting game. Sometimes it can be like an engine building game, deck building, all these different kinds of things. It's always really satisfying. I feel like when you get by the end of it, you feel like a god, you know?
Yeah, I think that's like one of the best things in a game. Is like
it's just satisfying. It feels good. So we're going to talk about our top 10 games that really, really ramp it up. Our number 10 is going to be the Anarchy. You can also choose Hadrian's Wall in here, but the Anarchy is a better example of something that's going to really ramp up. And that is because of, one, the game itself ramping up, and then you're kind of playing of the game ramping up. So this is, again, kind of a sequel to Hadrian's Wall. It's a big roll and write, very kind of multiplayer solitaire. It's really mostly a solo game, so much so that in the Anarchy, they literally made a whole solo campaign for it because most people play it solo. But it's a big roll and write where you have two different sheets, and it's just all combos. You can like cross off this thing, which gives you a worker, which you can then use over here, which allows you to cross off this thing and get this. It's a really big like boom, boom, boom. And as you go, you're ramping that up and up. But at the same time, like I said, the game itself is going to really ramp up. And that is because you are getting attacked every single round. So every single round you're going to get attacked, and those attacks are going to ramp up and up and up. The first one is just kind of one thing. By the end of the whole thing, you're getting hit by like 5 different things. There's all these different ways that you have to kind of defend your keep, defend your castle. You can defend against like arrow attacks and like tar attacks and catapults and all this different kinds of stuff. But again, every single round of the game, that is going to be worse and worse and worse. There's going to be more attacks with more fury and that kind of stuff. So the game itself is ramping up. So you have to ramp up along with it. On top of ramping up along with it, you need to be scoring points and doing all of these things. So the game naturally is just going to get kind of crazier and crazier and crazier as you go. It's a really, really fun, if you like really combo-y roll and write games, which we very much enjoy. I love roll and writes where you cross off this, that gives you a bonus, which allows you to do this, and that gives you a bonus, allows you to do this. I really, really like those kinds of games, and the Anarchy is a really good one for that. And the game itself is also getting harder and harder and harder as you go, and it's got a solo campaign, which is really, really cool.
Next up is going to be Empires of the North. This is an Imperial Settlers game. This is a kind of deck running game where you're going to have a certain faction, and each faction is sort of going to have their little engine within themselves, and your kind of goal in the game is going to be getting that engine up and running by playing cards out into your tableau, being able to start activating all those things, generating resources, being able to convert those resources into points. And every faction is going to again have a little different way they go about generating those points. So I really enjoy this game with kind of an element of like a race when you're playing it. It's like, okay, how fast can I get up this engine, get up to that 25-point threshold to trigger the end of the game and win? It feels really fun because in that first round, you have a handful of starting resources, you have a couple of workers you can go deploy, you have some ships you can go out to and visit islands and raid them and plunder and all that stuff. But you very quickly assemble a tableau in front of you that starts giving you more levers to pull. And I really enjoy just figuring out like, okay, this faction, they want to do this thing. They're going to have a bunch of these kind of farms out. They're going to produce these resources. They're going to then, again, trade them into their kind of point cards. And sort of like you're feeding this engine. And so it gets up and running really fast. And on that last round, you inevitably are just doing a bunch of stuff, racing forward in points when you may have scored just a couple in the earlier rounds. and then the game kind of ends quicker than you think. If you can kind of play it right and get those levers and everything dialed in perfectly, it's really, really satisfying when it comes together.
Number 8 is going to be Wingspan. Now, Wingspan is interesting in the sense because you're ramping up, but the game is also taking actions away from you. So this is a game where you are an ornithologist, or I guess an amateur ornithologist. You're bird watching, you know, you're looking at birds and stuff. And you're building out your engine with these various birds. You have these 3 different biomes: the forest, the grasslands, and then the wetlands. And then you have these bird cards that you can spend food to put into play in their appropriate biome, and some can go in multiple biomes. And on your turn, you can basically do one of a couple different things. You can play a bird, like we said, or one of the main things you can do is basically activate one of those biomes. And you're basically gonna take one of your little workers, which is cubes, put it at the end of the biome, so basically the first empty spot where it doesn't have a bird in it, and you will activate that biome. The forest will give you food, the grassland will give you eggs, and then the wetlands will allow you to draw cards. But then that action cube is going to move onto every bird in that biome until it gets to the end of the biome. And many of the birds in the game are going to activate in that way. Not all of them. Some will activate at the end of the round, some are the end of game, some are like one-time things, but a lot of them will be activating that. And so you're building out this engine. So the game has a natural ramp up because of the fact that at the beginning of the game, you have no birds. So there's nothing really to activate other than activating the biome. But as you put more and more birds into your biome and really sometimes specialize, like, oh, I'm gonna put a whole bunch in the forest biome, and that way whenever I activate that, I'm activating all these birds. I can do all these crazy things, build this giant bird engine. It's really, really nuts. But it's interesting because at the end of every round, you lose one of your action cubes. So the game kind of balances out that way, because I do feel like if you had all those actions the entire game, it probably would be too much. I feel like you would get, the game would just go on forever, I think, because you frankly would get too powerful. I think, honestly, your bird engine would get too crazy, and your bird engines in this game could already get absolutely bonkers. And so I think it's a good kind of curtailing of that ramp up, but you still do ramp up a lot because, again, you really just, one of the reasons why I like Wingspan is because I just like building giant, weird broken bird engines. Like, oh, this one right here, I have all these cards in this row and they do all of these crazy things. Okay, great. I find that very, very fun. And this game, again, really, really ramps up as you go because you're seeing more and more birds and building out that engine.
Next up is going to be A Feast for Odin. This is, of course, a gigantic sandbox-style worker placement game from Rosenberg, where the kind of ramp up that I always experience is that in every round, you get another worker added to your pool to use. So you have more kind of ability to activate different action spaces. There's also stronger action spaces you can do because the whole kind of menu of actions have these different columns. The strongest actions are going to require you to put more workers down at one time, but you get a lot more out of that action. So as you go through the game, you have a larger and larger and larger pool of workers. And so you get the sense that you can do these bigger things. You can start going to explore distant islands and filling up these boards. In this game, you are presented with kind of your player board that has a whole bunch of negative points on it. And through the game, you're going to be gaining tiles, upgrading those tiles, making sure you can feed your people, because this is Uwe Rosenberg after all. And then filling out your board, the buildings you build, the islands you explore. You want to fill everything out with these different tiles as effectively as you can. And there's 1,000,001 different ways you can kind of go about doing that with this huge, again, I always call it like a big old like Cheesecake Factory style menu where there's just 1,000 options that you can use. But I love that you start off with, you know, a decent sized pool of workers, but you keep getting that trickle of more and more workers, which allow you to do bigger and bigger actions as you kind of seek to be as efficient with the game as you possibly can.
Number 6 is going to be Witchstone. Shout out to Aldi from BGG. Aldi's one who introduced us to Witchstone. This is a great, super, super combo-y Reiner Knizia game called Witchstone, where you are witches and you are kind of building out this cauldron of actions. And the reason why this game really ramps up is because if you build it well, which I don't in this game very well, but you basically get to put together these absolutely insane turns. And that's because you have these domino tiles these kind of like squiggly domino tiles that have 2 different actions on them. And you'll put them in your cauldron, and then basically you're gonna get to do those 2 actions. But the strength of that action is basically equal to the group that you put it in. So basically, if I already had this group of like 3 like wand actions, and then I put another wand action and add it to that group, I now have a strength 4 wand action, because in that little cluster there's 4 of those symbols. And so as you're building out your cauldron, you're playing like a little like domino puzzle game where you're trying to build these big groups of these actions so that when you activate the wand action or the witch action or whatever, you get to do it in an insane way. But you can also mess yourself up, because if you cut off an action with other tiles, you can't access that cluster anymore. So it's a really cool little puzzle, but on top of that, it really, really ramps up. And like I said, it's also a super combo-y game, because doing the witch action allows you to do this thing, which then allows you to do the wand action, and you can do this. You can kind of like chain together these turns as you play the game, but the ramp up really comes from that action cauldron, because you really are like, you know what, I'm gonna go super heavy on my wands, and I am just gonna build this giant mass of wands, and basically put one down and do like a strength 10 action and do all this crazy crap. It can get really, really nutty with this game, with the combos and the ramping up of that action pool. It's a really interesting way to do actions where you have to think about it in a very kind of like sneakily puzzly way, but then you get to do all these things that like chain off each other. It's very, very fun. This game kind of came out, and I feel like no one other than Aldi was talking about it, which is why we played it, because Aldi really, really liked this game. We love this game, and it kind of went under the radar. I really wish it would get more of a push, because of the fact that I think it's a really, really excellent Reiner Knizia game, and that ramp up is very, very satisfying.
Next up is going to be Slay the Spire. A lot of deck builders are kind of built on this ramp up idea where you're going to start off with some simple cards. You're going to be adding better and better and better cards. So hopefully in the late game, as you're drawing cards, you are just drawing a much more powerful hand than when you began. In Slay the Spire, you really get a chance to feel your character develop as you go, because you were going, it's based on the video game, of course. Slay the Spire, the board game, you are going through, you know, your kind of gauntlet through these 3 different acts of the Spire. And as you go through encounters with monsters and stuff, you are often going to be given card rewards. So you can add a card to your deck and kind of not only have better cards, but really tailor a specific strategy based on the character you're playing and then the cards you come across, trying to get into a kind of a build. You know, for the Ironclad, for example, there's opportunities to add a bunch of strength. So as you're playing this, you know, this encounter, you're getting all the strength down, and all of a sudden your attacks are hitting way harder than they would just as they are printed on the cards. You also have the chance to upgrade your cards. Your cards can become more powerful even within themselves. So you have this other kind of layer of being able to build up a character. There are kind of gold cards you can do. There are all sorts of relics you can get that are going to give you additional little abilities and buffs and things like that. And you are playing cooperatively, so you kind of feel the collective strength of your party growing, and because it's cooperative, someone can put an effect on a bad guy, then I'm the one that makes use of that effect. So it gets really fun because you can toss all these different abilities around, where you start off in a really kind of humble way where you're sort of doing like 1 hit and blocking for like 1, and then by the end you're just like doing massive damage to these like hordes of monsters.
Number 4 is going to be Papyria. Papyria is, let me just put it this way. The scoring in Papyria gets so crazy that there is a pile of 50-point tokens. These little shield tokens, those are 50-point tokens. So basically, whenever you get past 50 points, you take a token. And there is a whole pile of those tokens, because you need a pile because you're scoring so much in this game. It's insane. The scoring of this game gets absolutely bonkers. So this is a game where you're going around these 2 rondels, around the Tigris and Euphrates. You have a boat that's going around the rondel, going around the river, and then there's a wanderers, they're called little like workers, that are going around a second rondel around it. And basically, whichever one you move, wherever you land, you're going to get to do 2 of the actions that are basically next to that spot. And they're slightly different for the ships and then for the workers, but they're pretty similar. And a lot of times what you're doing is you're going to be getting these tiles and putting them in your ever-growing landscape, and there's going to be all these different things on those tiles. There's going to be like trees, there's going to be mountains, there's going to be like these statues, there's going to be spots where you can put like sanctuaries and spots where you can put like cities, and there's a river, all these different kind of stuff. You're kind of building it out Carcassonne style where you kind of want things to match up if you can. You want things next to each other. And then on top of that, when you move your ship, you can also get these scoring tiles. So basically means when you grab one of these scoring tiles, you will get to, I'm sorry, it's not just your ships, it's either one. You can get these scoring tiles, which means you're immediately going to score all of your trees. And your trees score for your biggest group of trees, like you find where all your trees are connected through tiles, your biggest group, you'll get 1 point per tree. Great. But as your ship is moving around, you can start getting these multiplier tokens. Or if you get a multiplier token for trees, and you put it kind of like in your little tableau, now I get 2 points per tree. And you can just keep getting these multiplier tokens to the point where you're getting like 5 or 6 or 7 points per tree, and you have all of these trees in there. There are literally times in this game where I, on a single scoring event, will score in like the 60s or 70s. Just for that one thing. And that is why you have so many 50-point tokens, because you're scoring into like the 300, 400, 500 points in this range. It's crazy how it ramps up. But the really interesting part of this game is there is also a knowledge track. Your score track goes one way, your knowledge track goes the other way. And your knowledge track is what caps your scoring. So if I'm scoring 50 on this thing from like my sanctuaries or whatever, but my knowledge is only at 5, the maximum that I can score is 5. So you're also doing these things to try to move your knowledge marker up, because that is always going to cap your scoring. It's a really interesting balance between those two, where you're trying to ramp up your scoring, but you have to ramp up your knowledge or else you won't be able to do anything with that scoring. It's really, really interesting. I really like games with rondelles. This one's got 2 of them. The scoring is bonkers. It really ramps up. It's crazy.
Next up is going to be Dice Miner. This is a great dice drafting game that we really recommend you play at 2-player, because then this ramp-up effect is even more pronounced. But in this game, you're mining these different mountains, your dwarves, and you're going to be drafting these dice from this little dice pyramid that's kind of on a mountain tray. It's very cool. And each of these dice types are going to have different ways that they score at the end of the round. There are kind of standard looking dice that are your tunnel dice, and you want to make sets of 1 to 5. There are these gems where they're each worth a point, but if you have the most gems, you get double points. There are hazards, which can be negative points, but there's shields and things you can get that turn those negatives into positive, and on and on and on. Where the ramp up comes in is at the end of the round, you score all the dice that you managed to collect. And then those dice stay with you, and they become part of your trove. You re-roll all those dice, and now they're set for the next round. And now you refill the mountain, and you draft again. So you're adding to your pool of dice. In the third round, of course, now you have 2 rounds worth of dice that are sitting in front of you, so you can really get a lot done and score these big points. In a 2-player game, it's even more pronounced, because you have the same size mountain, you're drafting the same amount of dice, but now it's only going between 2 players instead of being spread out around 3 or 4. So in that third round, you really have a huge pile of dice that you are now rolling, making use of, and stuff like that. It's really fun, really satisfying. It's one of those games where it's almost guaranteed that from round to round to round, your score will be larger every time. So you really can kind of feel yourself build up as you draft and trade around these different dice.
Number 2 is going to be Lost Ruins of Arnak. This is a game where this is, at least for my mind, is the game that I always think about as a game that ramps up as it goes along. And this is because there's many games like this. Obviously, we're talking about these games. There's many more. Again, make sure to put them down in the comments which ones we're missing. But there's many games that are like, oh, this game is 5 rounds long, like Lost Ruins is. The first round is going to be like 5 minutes. The second round, though, is like 10 minutes. And then the last round is like a half hour, because everyone's getting to do so much more stuff. And Lost Ruins of Arnak, in my mind, is like the quintessential game that I think of when I think of that, where like the last round to the first round, in terms of the time difference, is wild. This is a game where it's a mix of like a deck building, you're moving up tracks, you're doing some worker placement. It's kind of a mishmash of a whole bunch of different things. But this game, in my opinion, is an extender game. It's all about trying to extend your round as long as possible. because in this game, you can like put out a worker and that gives you these resources. These resources now allow you to bump up the research track. That research track gives you this little bonus. Oh, now I have this resource. Oh, now I can play this thing or this card or whatever, and that then allows me to do this. And now I have these resources, I can bump up this track again. And that then gives me, it's just one of those games where you kind of like, you're constantly trying to get resources and get things to extend your turn. Oh, this allows me to bring back one of my workers. Great, now I can put them out again, get resources. Now I can bump up this track and do this. It's one of those games where you're just extending and extending and extending. And really like the fun of the game to me is that. It's that extension, it's that ramp up. The fact that like, sometimes in this game, you're just going and going and going, and you just keep finding ways like, ooh, I can get an arrowhead. Great, that allows me now to do this, and that gives me this, and now I can do this, and it's just like, it really, really feels satisfying. But again, that first round where you just kind of have like a basic deck of cards, you don't have anything really cool yet, you're kind of doing a couple things, okay, pass, move on to the next round, okay, now I can do a couple more things, okay, move on to the next round, okay, now I can start doing more things, and by that fifth round, you're just doing so much. It's just the quintessential game for me that I think of when I personally think of this concept of ramping up. Lost Ruins of Arnak is so much fun because of that, at least to me, and I really, really enjoy it.
The game that always comes to mind when I think about ramp-up games is Russian Railroads, or Ultimate Railroads, which has Russian Railroads and all the different versions within it. This is a worker placement game where you are placing out your workers on this board and then kind of progressing your tracks. You have these different tracks that you are kind of progressing these pieces down, and the way it kind of works is there's all these different colors of tracks. The kind of neutral color wood is not worth anything, but it is the limiter for every other type of track. So if you want to get your more valuable stuff onto kind of develop down these tracks and stuff, you need to do the kind of boring wooden one and then bring your more valuable things behind it. But then you also need to get trains to actually carry things down that amount of track. And the further you can kind of go, the more points you'll score. So this has a great kind of cumulative build effect where in round one, you'll get some stuff done. You might score a couple points. There's also these little factory tiles and things you can do. You don't have very strong trains, so you can't go very far down a track, even if you manage to develop it a little bit. But then in the next round, you kind of pick up where you left off and you carry the football forward. So now you are bringing things forward. You maybe have unlocked a couple different types of track that are more valuable, so you can start getting those things onto the track. And then now, if I have 2 or 3 different colors that will score points, and there's kind of a rarity level to it where the further down the line tracks are much more valuable. In those later rounds, you're scoring all these different colors that are on this track, and there might be doubler tokens you put up there, so you can get a whole mess of points. As you kind of continually invest, there's also different spots where you can place different tokens and things and kind of modulate like what kind of bonuses you're going to get and all that. So it's a great game of just kind of just continually building, adding on, getting some employees and stuff to get some special actions and things for yourself, and ramping up so that in that first round, I think the first time I played this, the first round I scored like 4 points, literally like 4 points, nothing. The last round I scored like 85. So it's just like the ultimate, like nothing to the absolute moon if you can kind of work it right. It's a really great, ultimately fairly simple worker placement game. Like all the actions make sense. You're kind of bumping these little track development pieces, and it's just a super satisfying engine. Literally your train engines, the further your trains can go, the more points you generate. And so it just kind of comes together in a very satisfying way. So those are 10 games that really ramp it up in our opinion. Some of our favorites. Of course, there are many more that could qualify for this.
Yeah.
So what we want from you is give your favorites in the comments below. What are the ones that for you, you're like, yo, the ramp up in this game is unreal.
Bonkers. Yeah.
We want to get that so we can have people get a bunch of awesome suggestions from the chat. So we appreciate that. I am Mike.
I'm Nick.
That's Nick. We are the Brothers Murph, and we'll see you all in the next Top 10.
Bye, everybody.